Hello, and welcome to the latest broadcast of the Dis Divas podcast. Dis Divas, where two friends with dysautonomia decided to ditch their salt and vinegar chips for a support group that's the perfect blend of sass and self care. Join us for some serious belly laughs and a healthy dose of sarcasm as we navigate the ups and downs of chronic illness together. Today's subject is discouragement. What happens when you get discouraged?
Hi,
Hi, how are you?
I'm doing good. How are you?
I'm doing good. I'm excited about today's topic. What about you?
Very excited. Very excited.
hmm
And when we say we're
hmm
talking about being discouraged, we're going to go into when we have a bad day, right? Pretty much what happens when we have like a very bad dysautonomia day.
hmm Like our worst day ever. Like what I
Mhm.
think there was, I forget who did this, but I think it was raising awareness for mental health. And there were a bunch of people that said on my worst day. And I was like, that was a great idea. And they had like 15-second snippets. And I'm like, we could literally spend like 6 hours talking about our worst day, you
At
know?
least.
You want to start?
I think for my worst day, I've had so many. Um, Ending up in the emergency room is always the worst day for me. Worst case scenario, that's where I end up. It's kind of like my home away from home, to the point of where you go in to check in at the ER and they know my name. So I don't have to show them my ID. They just go, "Oh, hey, Christine, things aren't going so well today. We'll call you back. Don't worry." Not the best place to be well known for something. But as far as worst day, it would be when you get a dysautonomia, or I guess as we would address it as a drama llama, which are symptoms, and I can't control them, or I'm in public. The worst thing is when you're in public, or you're in the car. But if you're in a store, or you're at a friend's house, or you're like at a major theme park, for instance, or a major convention. That has happened to me. A major convention comes to Central Florida every year, and we had just arrived, and I had a significant adrenaline dump. My blood pressure went sky high, and I ended up having to go to security and police and was escorted out of the convention center via ambulance to go to the hospital. That was probably one of my worst things because I was more embarrassed. I mean, I didn't feel good, don't get me wrong, but the drama and the trauma of being pulled out and everybody staring at you, it makes you feel worse.
Now, what does the ER do for you?
It depends on the ER. My local ER, they will pretty much come in and say, "Hey, what can we do for you? What can we do that'll help you?" Different ERs, it depends on the doctor. I might get a doctor who's familiar with POTS, and then I'm like, "Oh, thank you, thank you, thank you." Or I'll get someone who's not as familiar, and then you have to educate them a little bit, and then they'll usually do what they want to do, which isn't always the best thing. We end up going round and round with discussions.
Wow. So when you get discouraged, do you go into the ER like guns ablazing, like the Christine I know saying this, and this, or do you sometimes let the doctor kind of take over, or are you just right in their face saying do this and this and this?
It depends. If Explain the protocol. If I feel like they're not doing what I need to have done as part of the protocol, then I will explain to them. And then if that doesn't work, then yes, I will be in their face. And I will be asking to speak to a charge nurse and working my way up. But that's only happened 2 or 3 times. And Lord knows I've been to the ER probably, well over 100 times. Well, probably more than 200 times, if we want to be honest about it.
What was your
So,
worst year? How many ER
2019.
visits the worst year? 2019?
I think I had 39 ER visits. That was the last year I worked full time.
Wow.
and it was the
Wow.
stress of working the job. And that's what my cardiologist said. He's like, you just can't do this. I used to end up being, we discovered that it was happening on Mondays, and Mondays were a very stressful day for me based on the nature of the work that I did. And he's like, did you notice that this always happens on a Monday? And I was like, no, good point, though. It's the most stressful day of the week for me.
Mm-hmm.
Things just kept getting worse and worse. And then I ended up having a blood clot in my lung and had, issues regarding that. And everything just spiraled out of control. And I was like, I just can't do this anymore.
Do you find now that you're a couple years into it, you don't get as discouraged? Do you feel, but there are some days you're just like, I've had it. Like, do you still have those days?
I get discouraged, but I don't think I've ever had a day where I've had it. I can't do this anymore, because
Right.
that's kind of not how I'm wired. I'm like one of those, remember those old amusement park dolls that you can throw a baseball at and knock it down and it keeps coming back up? No matter how many times you hit it, I feel like that. And I feel like if I let it get me down, then I'm done. And I'm not
Right.
going to let it get me down. How about you?
You're such a warrior. So my issue is I think I know too much. As a nurse, I worked in the ER. I've done a lot of different nursing jobs in the past. And when I first started going to the ER, it was in 2018. I think, like you, I probably had close to 50 visits in 2018 because no one could figure out what was wrong with me. And now looking back, I believe it was this, probably the whole time, who knows? But my issue is I go into the ER with an attitude. And if I get a doctor who's all cocky and egotistical, that's bad. I remember one situation, and this was probably the worst it has ever been. I was in a really bad mast cell crisis. I was doing COVID shots at the time, and I had to quit. I had 2 anaphylactic reactions driving home from work, so I knew it was bad. Like, Kenny had to come get me, the ambulance. It was terrible. And so the next day, I went to see my allergist, and she wrote me out of work. And she said I was in a really pretty severe crisis, and this was my first time really having such a bad mast cell crisis. So that evening, I had my protocol in my hand from the Mast Cell Society of what to do if I ended up in the ER again. And we go to one of the local hospitals, and no one was there. Okay, so it was empty. I was the only patient there. And I went into the room, and the doctor walks in, and I forget what I said, but he basically put his badge in my face and shook it. And it took all I had not to beat the crap out of him. But ever since then, I believe I've had severe medical PTSD from going to ERs. And unfortunately, last year, I ended up in a lot of ERs, because of everything has gotten worse. But I would say for me, it's when the doctors don't take us seriously and the nurse is like, just calm down, just calm down. And I'm like, if you had a bear in front of you, could you calm down? So I get very, very discouraged.
Anxiety. Yeah.
Oh my God.
That's my trigger word.
Yeah, I'm with you. I would love to know other women's experience with the ER as well. Anxiety, how many times they've been told go on an antidepressant, it's just anxiety. And I have to be honest with you, I pretty much blame a lot of the medical practice for all the anxiety that I finally did have after getting diagnosed with it, I mean, just alone not having people believe you, that's enough to drive anyone crazy.
Mhm.
Oh,
yeah. And they look at you like, or you'll have a nurse condescending. I had a condescending nurse once, and she's like, well, if you feel like you're not having an anxiety attack, then that's on you, but you are exhibiting symptoms of an anxiety attack. And I'm like, no, I'm exhibiting symptoms of a severe adrenaline dump, which can mimic symptoms of an anxiety attack. However, it's not. And you telling me I'm having anxiety is actually giving me anxiety.
oh my goodness. There's such a lack of education. There truly is.
Yes.
I,
The other thing I wanted to briefly address, if we have time, and I think we do,
Yeah.
is what the protocol is, what our protocol is when we realize we feel like we really need to go to the ER. Because that's a big question a lot of people have. They're like, oh my God, I can't breathe. I'm short of breath. I got pain in my chest. My heart rate's high. My blood pressure's high. What do I do? What do I do? At what point do I need to go to the emergency room? And I want to say that this is a very personal thing for each person. You should have a protocol with your own individual physician as to what your breaking point is and what to look for and when to go. Me personally, I have my protocol. I will lie down, take my medication, put my feet up, hydrate, and try to relax. If after an hour or so things don't get better, or something new that has never ever happened before develops, then I get my butt in the car and we're going. But other than that, if it's something that the protocol can handle, even though it sucks really hard, I will stay home and wait it out. How about you?
It's been so much better since you and I both had the same diagnosis. Before I used to get so scared because I felt like my heart was bursting through my chest, and then it's like you go to the ER and they're like, you're fine. I mean, I didn't understand any of it, but I'm learning as I go. I'm learning to manage, my symptoms a little bit better. I am now on 2 different heart medications, which is definitely helping. I still have the drama llamas, but for me, the last time I went to the ER was late last year, and I couldn't get my pulse rate under control. This was before the heart medication, so it was out of control. But I did want to read, because we did talk about what our last day looks like. Our worst day. So, and I went over the symptoms. I'm like, holy shit, that's a lot. So my worst day is tachycardia, high blood pressure, brain fog, numbness in my fingers, tremors all over, burning in my head, chest, neck, and spine, spasms, loss of balance, can't bend over without severe dizziness, weakness in hands and legs, headaches, depression, and anxiety. That's a lot of shit we deal with.
Yeah, I would say I check off every single one of those, except I refuse to get depressed. I get too mad to get depressed, so that kind of counteracts that. I have days where I'm like, why? But yeah, the adrenaline hits me so hard, as I'm sure it does you, that I can't even stand up. I'm like Bambi on ice.
Yeah.
And I cannot stand up. I'm shaking so bad. And I had a paramedic tell me, oh, well, you're just making your anxiety worse. I'm like, no, I'm not. And if you don't keep holding on to me, I'm going to collapse on the floor.
I don't know. It's very, very discouraging. It's definitely, I don't know. For me, I've dealt with lupus, I've dealt with fibro, I've dealt with RA, all these other autoimmune crap diseases. And in my personal opinion, I feel dysautonomia is the one I'm most discouraged about, because I feel like the condition changes hourly. I haven't learned how to manage the fatigue yet, like the fatigue that I feel. And I think maybe when I learn to manage that a little bit better, it won't be as bad. I don't know.
That's it, because it's hard. I mean, you basically every day you get, if you go with the spoon theory, let me try speaking English here. If you use up your 12 spoons by noontime, you're done for the day.
Well, that's getting up to pee.
Well, yeah, that's true. That is very true. Just getting out of bed. I mean, I don't think the average person, when people have family members or coworkers or just anyone in general, and they're like, well, all you did was take a shower. All you did is cook a meal. All you did is just get out of bed. Well, that takes a lot of energy for us. And God forbid, if we get sick, like with a cold or COVID on something on top of this, then it's even worse. I mean, I ended up in the hospital over Thanksgiving, happy Thanksgiving, with bronchitis because it was that bad.
Mm-hmm. And you've been sick ever since. I don't think you fully recovered from that, have you?
Ever.
That was your first time having bronchitis?
It's better. It's almost better.
Oh, well. Yeah, your cough lasted forever. I remember that.
Yeah, and I've had pneumonia many times. times and never had a cough like that, and never was at the point where I was so congested I couldn't breathe, needed oxygen, needed to have breathing treatments like every 15 to 20 minutes. It was crazy.
Wow.
Any closing thoughts from you, Ms. Eva?
I would say we know you're discouraged and you're not alone.
That is very true. We will be here weekly to entertain you with some of our funny stories. I promise we will tell funny stories. But please do continue to follow us at Dysdivas on Instagram, Dysdivas on Facebook, Dysdivas on YouTube, and if you need to email us, dysdivas@gmail.com, which should be scrolling across the bottom of your screen as well. There's no question that's too silly. There's no question that's too personal. If you don't want us to share it, we won't. But we are here for you, and we want to spread awareness and build a community of people who can help you who've been through this, and for other illnesses as well. We were speaking about dysautonomia, but if you've got any type of an autoimmune issue, you're suffering as well, chronic illness, we're all in this boat.
Amen. Amen. All right. Namaste.
Yes. Namaste, Stacy.
All right. Bye.
Until next time. Bye.